that you are getting and which you are reading are because of how we have framed this conversation for our people. And in my submissions this morning, I will seek to highlight a few things that I think we should make dominant in our conversation. Now, let me start off by making 3 foundational comments, and I just have 5 points to make. The 3 foundational comments I'll make essentially are that it is appropriate that we are all concerned. We're all concerned about the kind of rhetoric that is coming out of ECOWAS and from citizens and every other place, because, you know, instability is growing and can easily spread across the sub-region. Apart from that, there's also palpable evidence that geopolitics is playing a big role here. And, you know, the West, be it Western Europe or Eastern Europe, is very interested in West Africa for their own economic interests. And now, even more than in times past, may I say, conditions are primed to have instability grow a bit further. So it is appropriate that we are all concerned about how this matter is resolved. Secondly, I think also respectfully, any conversation that appears to position this as a choice between diplomacy and force does not do full justice to what ECOWAS is confronted with, and I would explain that further. I think that if we want to help the conversation, we should posit the conversation in its full breadth. If we posit it in a manner that says, should we use diplomacy or force? 1, we will get a very clear answer that says diplomacy. And 2, that will not do full justice to the conversation here. And I know that's why, Dr. Kusini was commenting when I laughed earlier. Number 3 is that I think we need to be very, very, very careful to stick with what we know as fact and then put away conjecture and other things, especially as Sami Kujeto-Blakwa mentioned. There's a lot of propaganda that is being churned out to help various interests. And if you're not careful, you will base arguments on the propaganda and other sentiments and not the fact. But let me speak to my major points that I want to make as we go about this conversation. First of all, I believe, and I share the view that all the concerns that have been raised by the distinguished guests that you have here are legitimate. And those concerns have to be responded to as we go along, except for about 2 or 3 that I quickly think it's important to correct. In Ghana here, at least, it is not fair to make comments that suggest that Parliament is being ignored. In fact, on the 21st of August, 2023, the Ministers of National Security and Foreign Affairs requested to brief the Joint Committees of Foreign Affairs and Defense and Interior on the development so far and what Ghana was considering. You notice that in my brother Sami's submissions, that came later. I was not front-loaded. The front-loaded submission suggested that Parliament was being ignored. But here in Ghana, we have briefed at our request, not at our invitation, at our request, the Joint Committees of Foreign Affairs and Defense and Interior. Again, the suggestion that Article 75 requires some prior parliamentary approval or ratification is incorrect. Article 75 is about treaties and agreements. It is not about contributing to a multilateral engagement, because when you have a multilateral engagement, as has happened in times past, and I can give you a whole retinue of times when Ghana has been involved in multilateral engagements, 2002 in Cote d'Ivoire, 2013 in Mali, 2016, 2017 in Gambia. If it is a multilateral engagement from a body that Ghana is part of, you do not require prior approval, but the decent thing to do, the important thing to do is to engage Parliament first so that you do full disclosures to Parliament about why you are, a part of this enterprise, what the risks are, how you are mitigating them. And of course, if some financial commitment is required from the Treasury, you will need to get the kind of approval for it. So as I've mentioned, I agree generally with all the sentiments that have been raised, but just to highlight these specific ones. Now, the concerns, as I mentioned, are very, very, very legitimate. Concerns like what Dr. or what Colonel Festus Abuaji raised, that are the hands of all ECOWAS countries totally clean as they purport to lecture or intervene in this matter? Or how does ECOWAS answer the questions of financing or funding some parts of this, even as you go along? Questions about how ready are we, and whether or not we'll be doing, quote unquote, the dirty job of, Western masters. All of these are legitimate concerns that ECOWAS heads of state and ECOWAS countries owe answers to their populations about if and when we get there. But there is a fact that we are not including in our conversation. And I think that is what is swaying the whole conversation to that side. In fact, if you have, and I know you have, if you have followed, ECOWAS has not said that it is confronted with a choice between diplomacy and military intervention. I haven't heard ECOWAS say that. The two communiques issued by ECOWAS front-load diplomacy. In fact, in the insert of Commissioner Musa that you played, if you listen to what he says, and he's there, he can tell me if I'm misinterpreting him or not. His comments are that when you talk about the item 2, which is a possible use of force, they have answered the questions now